Dave da, how we doing? Welcome to podcast number 12. Another week is flying by, and I must admit it's getting a bit colder here in Wadebridge, but we've had a handsome day today. Bit of rain coming tea time-ish, but no, it's been a good day. And I had a chap called Will get in touch. I'd forgot, to be honest, but 5 years ago he contacted me. He's a photographer, and he asked if he could do my portrait. He was doing various people's photos and whatever, so I said yes, that's fine. And he's just been in touch again to say, could we do an updated one 5 years on? So he popped up today and took a few photos. Hopefully they'll come out all right. I think it was bad timing, really, because the last few nights we've had a few call-outs during the night, so I must admit I got huge bags under my eyes at the minute, so I said to him if he could Photoshop they out, that would be proper. Me life as a vegan is going pretty good too. I'm loving it at the minute, and my young friend Phil Trevina, dear of him, he sent me a link today for a sunflower seed peeling machine, which I think I might invest in, because 'tis a bit fiddly really trying to get the husks off, and then the blimmin' seed drops on the floor. You burn off calories just trying to get into the blimmin' thing. But I'm sticking to it at the minute and standing firm. Even Liz Dyke there, she's trying to lead me astray, but to no avail. I've had lots of people get in touch as well about last week's podcast about the snow, including some people that were actually at some of the funerals that I was talking about. And I did remember after another funeral that we'd been on where we'd got stuck in the snow a little bit, and that was down at Arlyn Bay. The snow wasn't too bad in town, but the family rang and said, we think we'll get through, we'd like to go ahead with it. And the hearse and the limo was meeting at the house, and then we was heading down to Penmount. This was in the days again before Glyn Valley was open. So we left Wadebridge, Father was driving the hearse and I was driving the limo, and all was going well until we got out on the outskirts of Padstow there and went down Traitor, past Fernley Banbury's farm, and then through Windmill, and then started heading down to Arlyn. And I think where the problem was, there was snow there on the hill that was going down, but also there'd been kids there, they'd been tobogganing and everything and compacted the snow. And as Father was creeping down, the camber of the hill was pulling in into the edge. And of course the same thing was happening to me behind. Now luckily there was a chap down the bottom hill, he was driving a meat lorry and he couldn't get up, he was stuck, and he saw what was happening to us. So he came up the hill, I think another bloke come with him, and he said, right, when you let your brake off, he said, I'll stand between you and the edge, and then as you start to slide in, we'll push you out. So they started with Father first, and gingerly he let his foot off the brake, and sure enough, they pushed him out, and they got him down to the bottom of the hill. So Father went on to the house, and then they came back up again and did the same for me. So we weren't too far behind, because we had left in plenty of time. So we left from the house in Arlyn, which was right down there just over the bridge there on the left. And then luckily, the other way out of Arlyn, by the time we were ready to go, somebody had gritted it. So we headed off to Penmount and we made it safely, pretty much on time. So that was one other funeral that I did remember after I recorded last week's podcast. So this week I thought I'd talk about another few funerals that we'd conducted that had made the news either in the local papers or latterly on the website or on the TV. So the first funeral I'd like to talk about was for a white wizard of Tintagel. Now this was a pagan funeral, and it was led by a high priestess and was attended by hundreds of mourners, and a lot of them were dressed as druids, wizards and fairies. The arrangements did take a bit of coordinating really, because this high priestess was actually living and working in Austria at the time, so we had to tie in with flights with when she could get over, tying them with the crematorium, and also obviously tying to get it sorted before she had to fly back again. This funeral did get a lot of press coverage, and even BBC Spotlight was there and they filmed it, and it was on their local news programme that night. I think if I tried to describe what it all looked like, I don't think really I'd do it justice, but I have got a copy of it on my YouTube channel. I'll try and put the link in the description of this podcast, or otherwise I think if you just went on to YouTube and put something in like Tintagel Wizard Funeral or something like that, it should come up. And they do show a little bit there of us going into the chapel, and they show bits of the service when it took place and interviews afterwards, including one with me. And I think I did have my TV voice on a little bit. I think I was cutting up a bit, but it is quite interesting. So like I say, I will try and put the link in the description of this podcast. If not, there is definitely a copy on YouTube. Another funeral I'm going to talk about today was a Viking funeral. And this took place at Glyn Valley. And again, it had a lot of press coverage at the time. And a lot of the mourners actually did come dressed as Vikings. Now, this was quite an impressive sight, as you can imagine. And the thing that I remember most was the chap who took the service, and he needed glasses to read what he was saying. But I thought it was quite clever what he did. He just had the lens from the glasses, but they was tied around his head with a thin bit of leather, which looked quite authentic, I thought, really. Now, as you may know, we're quite lucky, really, with our crematoria down here in Cornwall, because the funerals are an hour apart, which is ideal because it gives the half hour to have the service in the chapel. The 15 minutes before that is your time where we would go into the chapel, set out the orders of service, check the music's okay and everything like that. Then the service would start. You got half hour, and then you got a good 15 minutes outside if mourners want to talk to friends before we drift away. Whereas I know up country in some crematoria, 'tis like every 20 minutes, and you couldn't have a nice service then. So when our Viking funeral had finished, I went and opened the side door where you leave the chapel, and all the mourners followed out. Now, the funeral after us was quite a large funeral too, and all of their mourners, they was all starting to congregate in the overflow car park, and this is one thing I will never forget, was the look on their faces of total surprise, because they obviously knew that a funeral was taking place, didn't know that it was a Viking funeral or anything. And then to see me leading out all of these Vikings in full Viking dress, the look on their faces is something I'll never forget. That was unforgettable. I think then from memory, the ashes of the Viking were going to be put in a small replica Viking boat and set out on the water and would be set fire to. So finally, I thought I can't really do a podcast where I talk about wizards and Vikings and druids without mentioning our very dear friend, the Archdruid of Cornwall, Ed Prynne. This was another funeral that had a lot of coverage in the press and the media, and rightly so, because Ed was a lovely man, a true Cornishman, and a proper character. For those of you from away that don't know much about Ed, there's lots of articles on the website about him, and also lots of videos on YouTube as well. And I had many lovely chats with Ed over the years, and I think 'tis brilliant that through the videos and that on YouTube, he will be remembered for a long time to come. We was coming out of COVID times when Ed sadly passed away, and we had a fantastic procession. We left the quay down there at Padstow, and we headed on to St Maron Church, and there were lots of people on the roadside paying their last respects as we went by. And then we stopped outside Ed's house just for a few minutes before we went on to the church. Again, if you don't know what Ed's garden looked like, there are pictures on the web. It's a fantastic site, really. It's full of standing stones that he's imported from all over the world, and it's well worth looking at. I will always remember his lovely dry sense of humour, and I don't know if they've still got archives of Radio Cornwall in the early days or no, but quite often they used to go up to Ed's and they used to do interviews, and there's a couple that I remember I still laugh about now. I can't remember if it was maybe Chris Blount or Ted Gundry, I'm not too sure, but they'd go up and interview Ed, and I know one time they went because he'd formed a group. Now, this group was called Eddie Ardrock and the Mystics. I remember that, and they introduced it, and they said, we'll now hear the first song. And cool, what a row it was. They was just banging away on drums, somebody blowing a football whistle, and it went on for a minute or so. And I remember that when it finished, they then interviewed Ed, and they said, and what was that song called? And he gave it a lovely title, something like a Spring Morning in Cornwall or something. I can't quite remember. So he introduced the group, I think, from memory, and talked about it a bit. And they said, right, can you do us another song? So he said, yeah. So he gave it another poetic title. I can't remember what it was. And off they went, and bang, 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 whistle going. And after a little while, the presenter shouted, stop, hang on. He said, Ed, that sounds exactly the same as the one you just done. And Ed said, no, Tin, he said, we've all swapped instruments. Pure genius, that's what I think, pure genius. Another interview I remember that they did with Ed was just at the beginning of the National Lottery when that started. And they said that one of Ed's powers was that he could look into the future, and they had him in so that he could predict the 6 winning numbers and the bonus ball. So sure enough, Ed, he went through his little routine and he came up with 6 numbers and the bonus ball, and they thanked him very much, and they said, so that'll be the winning numbers then for this Saturday. And Ed said, well, no, he said, 'tis the winning numbers, but I can't tell you what week it's going to be. Genius again, pure genius. So, like I said, he'll be sadly missed, and I'll miss seeing him in his garden as we drive out to St. Mirren, but he will be remembered for many years to come. So I think that's about it for this week's podcast, but I can't go without wishing our dear friend out Poseth, Martin Taylor, a happy birthday. The Irvin, he rung up and said, you must come out. He said, 'tis me 80th, and he said there is a pasty out here with your name on it. But sadly, it clashed we out that evening out Carlisle Bay with our grave digging friends Al Roberts and Jane and Terry and Barney and all the gang. So sadly, I couldn't come, and of course it would have had to have been a vegan pasty anyway. But happy birthday, Martin, and I'll pop down Poseth to see you sometime. Another lovely chap and a proper character. So until next week, take it steady, wish ye well, do Guinness.